Hello, my name is Nicolas and welcome to Here to Strive. This is our second video about Jira Software and Jira Work Management. If you haven't watched the previous video, I highly encourage you to go and take a look at it, since there we explain some basics of how Jira in general works. Today we will be looking into Jira Software, more specifically one of the three templates that they offer. This one would be the Kanban template. You can also choose from Scrum and bug tracking, but today we only focus in Kanban. So let's create a new project. You can see the three options. Now remember, no matter which one you choose, which template you choose, you can then customize the project however you like, so you won't be limited by the amount of features. Um, just for you to keep in mind, we will only be taking a look to these two templates in these courses. We won't really be covering bug tracking since it's not that important. So let's begin with Kanban. You can read a bit about the template. And like I mentioned in the previous video, we will be focusing on team managed projects since they have basic features. I'm gonna write down the name and let's write an SK as a key. Okay, we're gonna click next, create our project and go to project. Very well. So you can see that the interface is a bit different to Jira Work Management. In Jira Work Management, to the left, we have a list of projects, a list of started and most recent projects, and then we have a lot of options up here in the top. Now, there is no list of projects here. If we wanted to access another project, we would have to click on the projects button. And to the left, we have all the options or features that this particular template has enabled. So we have a roadmap, we have a board, and then the code under development is enabled. We also have pages, shortcuts, and the project settings. So the first thing we will do is go into the project settings and go to the features. You can see that this is what mostly differs from Jira Work Management. We have way more features here than in Work Management. That is because this is a bit more advanced, it's a bit more agile focused, and it's also, as the name states, aimed to software development. Now, this doesn't mean that you can't use it for other things that is not software, but it's mostly optimized for it. So we can see that by default in this template, we have the roadmap enabled, which is very similar to the timeline. It's essentially a Gantt chart we will be looking into in a moment. Our backlog is not turned on, and this is usually because you use a backlog when you're working with sprints so that you can plan your work ahead and then move all those tasks or issues to the current sprint. We have the board, which cannot be disabled, of course. The reports, we can enable this one, and then the issue navigator, which I always like to enable because it allows you to browse the list of issues, and you have filters and some extra options you might find useful. Now, the sprints, this is something that we're going to cover in the video, probably next video, where we take a look at Scrum projects, and you can see it's off because it requires the backlog to be on. Then we have the project estimation, but we will also leave this for next video. We have the code releases and deployments. This is something that developers would take care of, but for this example, we're going to turn them off. And then project pages, which would be Confluence, we will also turn it off because it's out of the scope of this series of videos. For now, let's leave it like that. So let's go back to our project and see what we have. Let's begin with the roadmap. If you have watched our previous video, you will more or less know how this works. We have a list of tasks, and then they can have subtasks, and you can create a timeline by adding start and due dates. the main difference between roadmaps and the timeline from Jira Work Management is that the roadmap begins with epics and it can have tasks below the epics, but you cannot see subtasks from those tasks. So let's make an example here. Let's say this is phase number 1, and then we have the phase number 2 of the project. So we have phase number 3, just there we go. So we can create a child issue, which will be a task. Now this project has only enabled epics, tasks, and subtasks. We have more issue types we will later enable, but we will go with this for now. Task number 1, task number 2, let's go with task number 3. And as you can see, we cannot create any more child issues. We can only see 2 hierarchy levels in this roadmap. If we wish to create child issues, we need to go into this task, click on the Add Child Issue button, and create a subtask right here. Very well. Let's create another subtask. And let's also create more tasks here. And one more here. And we'll later see why we need this many tasks. I'm also going to create some child issues here. Task number 3. Okay, subtask number number 4. Okay, so let's try to create a timeline. Let's say that this epic, we know it's going to take 14 days, and this one will take, it has to come after this one, and it's going to take maybe a few days less, and then we have the last phase, which is going to take maybe a bit more. As you can see, it's a bit hard to see the date, so I'm going to change right here from the bottom right corner. I'm going to select, oh, you can't see it because my camera is there. Let's try to change that really quick. We have the selection here. We can select weeks, months, and quarters. So let's go with weeks. Okay, let me put my camera back down. And now we can see the date up here, and we can see the month. So as you can see, we have created then this timeline. I'm going to create some dependencies. We have covered this in our previous video. And now I would like to create or assign dates to these tasks. Now you can see that if I click here, nothing really happens. And this is because there's one setting that by default is off. If we go to up here and configure roadmap, we'll be prompted with this option of turning on the child level issue scheduling. So we're going to turn that on. Going to go back to the project. And we can now see that we are able to create or add dates to our tasks. So if we want to do that, for example, and then we want to create this last one here, that should work completely fine. And let's say that we want to do that. It's a bit of a, maybe it's not a very realistic example, but it's mostly just to prove the point that you can create dependencies between different issue types. Now you can see that we can also now see that this task has child issues and the status of the tasks. So that is great, but if we go into the tasks themselves, we can see that there are no start date or due date. This happens because by default, the issue type task doesn't have these fields enabled. So what we need to do is click on configure fields. We can drag and drop the start date and due date from there. We can also add more custom fields if we wish and save the changes. We can also do this with epics, but in this case epics do have a start and a due date, and with subtasks if we wish. Do that. Very well. Let's go back to the project settings then. Gonna go to roadmap, expand this once again. And if I click on this task, we should be able to see the start date and due date. Perfect. So that is great. We now have a very basic timeline right here. We have our Gantt chart with all the epics, and these tasks have a start date and a due date. We have some extra settings up here in view settings. These are quite basic options we can turn on and off. And we can also export this as a image or a PDF. Now we can go to board, and if you remember from our previous video, you will notice that everything is connected. We have a list of tasks here, and this is because by default the boards will only display tasks, they won't display epics, and they won't display subtasks. If we wish to see epics, we will need to go to the group by option and select epic. Essentially what this will do is to create groups. So we have this group here of tasks which belong to the first epic, second epic, third epic. Let's close this. And we can do the same for subtasks if we want to see a group of tasks. So these two subtasks belong to task number 1, which is part of the phase 1 epic. This task or subtasks are part of task number 4, which belongs to the phase number 2. And then we have the rest of the tasks which do not have subtasks as part of this board down here. This view can be particularly confusing because you have subtasks and tasks on the same board, and even though they are grouped differently, it can still be confusing for certain people, so keep that in mind. We can also filter by assignee. So where is assigned, in this case an assigned, but if I assign this to myself, for example, we can see how we start getting groups, which is actually quite useful. And of course, this is always keeping the columns that already exist. The big difference between Jira Software and Work Management is that when you group in Work Management, what you're grouping is by columns. And here we can group by columns, the statuses, but we can also group by rows, in this case, whoever is assigned to these tasks. All right, let's go back to where we started. So we have a list of our tasks with their epics and their due dates. That is amazing. Now let's say that we need to create a new status. For example, we need a blocked or pending status. What we can do is create a new column that says pending/blocked. Very well. And now we will just move this here. And we can start moving our tasks to our new columns. Something like that. Let's say this one is done. Very well. And this is great, actually. We can see if we go within the task that the status of this task corresponds to the column they belong to. Now, some more advanced projects might need to have more statuses than columns. And this is actually quite useful. I'm going to explain it in a moment, but for now, remember that we have for each column one status, and this is the list of statuses. So to do, in progress, pending, blocked, and done. Now, let's say that we need something a bit more complex, or let's say that we want to have, instead of 4 columns, we want to have 3 columns, but the second column is going to be called started because someone has started working on this. Now, we're not really saying that this is in progress, and we're not saying that it's blocked or pending. We're just saying that someone started working on this. Now, if we wanted to group the pending tasks together with the in progress tasks, what we will need to do is go up here, configure board, and now we can see that we have the columns of the Kanban board with the statuses of the Kanban board, or actually of the issues, sorry. So what we will do is, first of all, I'm gonna rename back this one in progress, and you'll see in a moment why. Hopefully this will rename the status. Yes, correct. So now it's called in progress again. I need to go back to configure board. Oh, for some reason, it's not reflecting the changes. Let's see if we can fix this really quick. Okay. So every time you change the name of a column, you're also going to change the name of the status, at least for now. Let's see, hopefully this has been updated. Perfect. So we have in progress and we have pending blocked. Have in progress and pending blocked. So like I said earlier, we want to rename this like started because someone started working on this. And we want to have both in progress and pending blocked under the same column. So we're going to have to delete this column because we can't have a column without any statuses. And now we can see that if someone decides to change the status of a task to in progress, it will land under the started column. But if they also change the status to pending blocked, it will also land under the same column. So if we save this, we're going to get a message that we're in a way unlocking any way of setting up the board. This is because we can have several statuses under the same column. We're going to save the changes and we're going to go back to the project. So now we can see that we have three different tasks. We have task number 1, which is in progress, task number 3, which is also in progress, but then task number 2 is pending blocked. Now, you might not find a use for it right now, but this is actually a quite commonly used feature for more advanced and complex projects where you need to summarize certain statuses all together. You need to group them under the same column because they mean something similar, or you're just not interested in having one column per status. Now, if we wish to go back to where we were previously, because right now you can see that we cannot create new columns, we'll have to click here, create a new column. Let's call it how it was called before, pending slash blocked. We're going to put it right here and we're going to leave it here. So in order to go back to the original settings, you will need to have one status per column. 1, 1, 1, 1. You cannot have more and you cannot have less. This is how you go back to the default settings. We go, yes, so we're going to save this. This is just warning us that we're going to go back to where we were before. And now you can see that you can create a new status that says, let's say, for example, customer waiting. There we go. So if I create a new issue here, this issue will have the customer waiting status. We have an extra status right now. Great. So one last thing, we can filter by epics here. We can filter by whoever is assigned here, and we have some insights here. We can get this is in beta. Some people might find it useful. To me, it's a bit confusing, so we're going to leave it like that for now. And we have some extra options we will not go through in this tutorial, which are manage workflows. That's an advanced feature we will take a look into a later video. Then manage custom filters, that is a more advanced feature. And then we can set a calendar reminder, which essentially connects to our personal calendar or our team calendar and create an event there to remind people that a due date is coming. That's it for the boards. By the way, we can rename the board here if we wish. So we can say Jira Software Kanban, for example. Let's now move to the report section. It's actually very similar to the section we showed in our previous video. We have 3 reports we can choose from because the other ones require sprints, but we're not going to go into them because they require more data. Let's go back to the project, go to the issues selector, or navigator, I'm sorry. And here you can filter by type, status, assignee, and then you can also filter by other different um, fields from the tasks or any issues that you have in this particular project. You can also mix with other projects if you wish, but that might be a bit confusing. And lastly, we can add shortcuts just like in Jira Work Management. It can be both a repository or just a shortcut with a URL. So let's say that we want to go to example.com, and here we're gonna add an emoji that's gonna allow us to show this like an icon, and then it's gonna say example. So now we have our emoji here, and then the name of the shortcut we just created, and if we click it, it's gonna take us to wherever we choose to go. So this is quite useful if we have documents and other shared things that we need to let the people know where they are, basically. Now let's go into the project settings. Here we can see we have the same settings as in the work management project. One thing that I forgot to mention in the previous video is that we can move to the trash projects from here. It's a bit hidden. The access page is pretty much the same. You can assign different roles and you can add people, and then you can also make this project private if you wish, if you have a paid subscription from Jira. You can change the notification settings from here, add notifications, edit the email and such. You have automation, which we will go through this in a later video. Then you have issue types. We have already seen this. You can also add new issue types from here. So now we can create tasks, stories, and bugs. We then have features, which we have also seen. We can go into the board settings with the custom statuses. We have the custom filters here, but this requires some knowledge of a particular language that they use. Then we also have the card cover images, which this means that if you upload an image to a task, or sometimes if you add a URL, it might pull an image, a preview, and show it in the board, in the Kanban board. Um, so it might look a bit different to the rest of the tasks, but it helps to identify them better. And then we have the roadmap settings where we can have the child level issue scheduling. We then have the tool chain. We can add some tools from here, but we're not going to cover this now. And then we have app field and Slack integration, which are a bit more advanced features we will also not cover here. All right, so that's pretty much what the Kanban template can offers. In the next video, we're going to look into Jira Software Scrum, the Scrum template, how sprints works, how backlogs work and such, which is quite useful for agile projects and agile companies and teams that work with iterations, with iterative approaches. Um, but yes, I really hope that you found this video useful. Please leave your feedback in the comments, and if you have any ideas or suggestions of videos or technologies systems that we can teach about, please leave them down below. We love to hear from you, and well, I hope to see you around. Have a nice day. Bye.